Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Next Gen Game Plan, a podcast for future sports leaders. I'm your host, Tyler Darr, and on this podcast, I will be interviewing sports industry professionals to learn about their career paths and what advice they have for those looking to break into sports. Today, we will be joined by Christopher Pirolo. Christopher currently works for the United Football League as an assistant video manager for the St. Louis Battlehawks. He grew up in New Jersey and Atlanta, and after bouncing around high schools, he headed to the University of Arizona, where he joined the Sports Marketing Association. There, he met many of his great friends and was able to intern with the Arizona Bowl. Additionally, he worked with the Arizona football team for 2 years as a student video manager before graduating with a degree in journalism and a minor in sport management, where he was awarded for his perseverance. He's now entering his third season working in coaches video for the XFL and United Football League. Christopher, thank you so much for taking the time to speak on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate you having me. I'm doing pretty good.
I'm glad to hear it. And absolutely, it's super exciting to hear about your journey. And I really appreciate you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Absolutely. I'm always excited to talk about this stuff, especially coming from another Wildcat. That's always something I love doing.
All right, Christopher, to start us off, could you tell us about your background and your journey of how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty loaded question. So if kind of a little bounce off your bio a little bit, I was born in Atlanta, grew up in New Jersey, though. My dad's family grew up there. And so it was kind of funny because his family grew up there. He did. And then because my great-grandparents came from Italy and got to Ellis Island in the 1930s. And then my mom's family grew up in Georgia. And so I kind of had two childhoods, one up in New Jersey with the Italian side of the family, and then one in the South back in Atlanta with my mom's side, the Southern side of the family. And throughout high school, I was originally going to graduate a lot sooner, but I ended up having a lot of health issues. My dad moved jobs a couple times and we bounced around a lot. So I had to go to 7 different high schools. And during all of those issues, including the health issues and whatnot, I had to take myself out of high school a few times to focus on my health. We had to try and piece my transcripts together. And it was really hard too, because one of the things I loved growing up, obviously, was sports, and I would play baseball and football most of my time through elementary school, middle school, and into high school a little bit until all these things started taking it away from me. It was tough to do that, but it was always something that, it was always something I could watch. It was always something that helped take my mind off a lot of the troubles that was going on. And so it was one of those things. It's like, I definitely want to still stay involved in some way. And lucky for me, my dad actually has also worked in the sports industry much of his career. So when I was a little kid, he was the associate athletic director at Army up in upstate New York. And that was really cool. And so some of my first memories were going up at West Point when I was like 4 or 5 years old. We would go to Army Navy games. It was just a lot of fun. Thankfully, I guess that kind of just got in my veins really at a young age. Once I finally got through all the craziness of high school and what was going on, I graduated a little later. I was 20 years old, but I was so ready to go to college, and I wanted to get kind of far away from where I was at the time, wanted a kind of a clean start. And I went to Arizona, because it was a big brand. It was a big school, good sports. And I'm like, this is going to be fun. And it was more than everything I could have possibly imagined it would be. I went to Tucson. My first semester had kicked off, and I was actually a pre-business major originally, and I was sitting in an MIS class, and they were talking about, I think, first or second week about a bunch of the clubs that they had. One of them was the Sports Marketing Club at the time, which has now been renamed the Sports Management Association. But I'm like, that sounds really cool. I'm gonna look into that. I looked into it, signed up for it, and that's the immediate start that I got. First couple of weeks on campus, because people I met there, they ended up being invited to my wedding. I'm still friends with them years after graduating. And we interned together and worked together in the athletic department and at the Arizona Bowl. And it's where I got my first internship from too. So that was an incredible launching point. Just kind of kept taking one step at a time and got me to where I am today so far.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. It's really cool to hear how far you've come since when you were in high school and to see how you've persevered through all those challenges. I'm also in the Sports Management Association right now, and I can definitely attest to what you said. It's a great starting point, and it can really launch you off if you put some time into it. So really cool to see where you've come from there.
Yeah, it was great, really. And I think it was the first month, because it was September, where they had already had an internship panel or like job panel for college students. And the Arizona Bowl was one of them there, and as was Arizona Athletics. They had ticketing office, the operations, like softball, volleyball, a bunch of sports where there was just awesome. I think even FC Tucson was there. And so it was so many opportunities. And I'm like, this is amazing. I mean, this is why you come to a school like this too, because you have so many opportunities. And I would always tell people, if you're just going to school just to get a degree and not, connect and get some work experience, you're probably doing it wrong, because you need to get that experience, especially in sports. If you want to, you got to build those relationships if you want to keep moving forward.
Absolutely. I totally agree with everything you said. You got to build the relationships, networking, and just going out of your comfort zone to see what's interesting to you. And then kind of building on that, what point did you realize you wanted to work in sports and the video aspect in particular? And what was that process like for you?
Just the sports side of things, it was probably in high school once I realized I couldn't play sports anymore. I ended up getting a traumatic brain injury, actually, from summer baseball, not football, but nevertheless, it stopped me from playing football ever again. I tried playing baseball a couple years after that for one season, and I wasn't fully better from that at that point still. And it just kind of wouldn't work out after that point. And I'm like, okay, well, that sucks, but there's still a lot I can do. I can still be involved, and that's a fun thing. And I actually was obsessed with wanting to coach at one point, football specifically. But when I was in college, I basically targeted jobs that interested me first, and then kind of had like multiple, like plan A, B, C kind of thing, and was totally open to other opportunities as well, like you need to be. And I did a few other like small sport jobs while I was there. But I always thought if I had the opportunity to take a football job, I'm going to take that, regardless of what it was. And that opportunity just came really quickly. As far as the video thing, it's kind of funny because it's kind of the same logic I use where it's like, oh, well, working for the football team directly would be awesome. I had no idea what a video manager was for a football team. And I was really glad to find out it had nothing to do with the creative thing, because like I'm not good with with using Adobe yet. I know a lot of people are into that stuff. It's always been hard for me to kind of I don't have the patience for that, to be honest. Just sit there for like 6 hours and create something. And I've got some really great creative friends. I don't know how they do it. It's really impressive. But so I saw the video manager job and I'm like, oh, working for the football team. This sounds awesome. And I get to see practice and I get to be at the games. I'm going to apply for this. That was pretty much the gist of my thought at that point, because I was able to still keep the internship with the Arizona Bowl. So the way I looked at it there, I'm like, okay, so I'll be able to work for the football team and I'll be able to continue the Arizona Bowl gig, which is a different set of experiences. It was more of like an operations for a special event, right? Because it's a bowl game. We got to work with the teams and vendors, and it was more kind of like a marketing thing in some aspects too, and community involvement. So it was kind of a completely different thing, but they were both fun to be around, and they were both really informative and just great experience. And so I was able to do both of them. And I just was like, hey, it gets my foot in the door and meet more people, and I just get to be around the sport that I love, and I'm gonna do this.
For sure. Yeah. I think it's great that you kind of looked at what you could do and saw that you could do both at the same time, took your interest in football and then turned it into where you are now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny because my first job right out of college too wasn't a video manager job either, because it's kind of a tough thing to get into. And a lot of guys that I've talked to, they've kind of said a similar thing. They kind of fell into it by accident. It's just because they're needed, but you kind of have to, again, you got to kind of know the right people to even know that the jobs are open a lot of times. So it was, my first job out of college was more of a kind of like it was more similar to the Arizona Bowl, where it was like an event operations job, special events. I worked for this company. We put on tailgates for donors and stuff at the University of Florida, which was a lot of work. But then the XFL at the time was relaunching again with The Rock after he purchased it. It was an opportunity in Dallas, and I'm like, that's what I want to do. So I'm gonna do that, and that's what brought me to Dallas.
Awesome. No, that's great. Super cool to see how one thing leads to another.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You mentioned earlier that football was kind of like your calling card. You knew you wanted to work in football. Many of your roles that you've worked in have been related to football. What has made working in that sport particularly so attractive to you?
I just love it. It's just my favorite sport. I think it always has been since I was a kid. I don't know, maybe blame the NCAA video games. Maybe blame the fact that my dad was an associate AD, and that was, he brought me to a bunch of sports. Like I would go to Army hockey or baseball, but I don't know. Football always struck a chord with me for some reason. It was my favorite playing growing up. Just, the physicality of it, the teamwork aspect of it. I just love it. And there's so many moving parts that go into it, as does all the other sports. They all have a lot of moving parts that go into it operationally. But yeah, just sometimes something's your favorite. I guess it works out that way. I would work in baseball though, or another sport that came to pass that way. But I'm very happy with where I am right now.
No, that's great. I'm glad you're happy where you're at. And every sport's unique in their own way, but football seemed to be your calling card, and everyone has their own thing, so they should just pursue what they believe is best for them.
Yeah, for sure. And again, that can change. And, I always think of it like, working in sports is not something that everyone gets to do. So I have a pretty good opportunity, and I'm really happy with it. Can't complain too much.
And then based on your experiences, what are some ways that college students can set themselves up for a career in sports?
Yeah, definitely kind of like we were talking about, make sure you network. I know it gets drilled into everybody's head. I know they do that at SMA. I know they do it in the classes. If you take any sports management classes or, whatever you're doing, they will be like network, take opportunities. If you have an opportunity to volunteer, just get FaceTime, you can call it, right? Make people kind of know who you are, introduce yourself, make them remember you, keep showing up. And be persistent, because you're going to get told no a lot. So make sure you have the ability to just kind of shake that off and not take it personally, because 99% of the time it's not. And you just got to keep trying. If you really want it, it'll eventually break through.
For sure. I think it's great advice. And like you said, it might be repetitive to some people, but that's just because of how important it actually is.
Yeah. And it's the truth too, because, especially now with online job boards and everything, and this is every career, right? It is so hard to apply for jobs right now because there's so many applicants coming from all over the country, all over the world. I mean, it's incredibly competitive. And then everybody who thinks sports is cool might be like, oh, I want to work in sports, even if and so it's a super competitive field, and you got people from all over the place. People will apply for jobs with maybe less benefits or maybe not a full-time job. They'll apply for a part-time sports job because of how cool it is, and they will do that when they probably wouldn't do that for a part-time marketing job. So it's very competitive, and you just got to remember that, you got to set yourself apart somehow.
For sure. Got to make sure you stand out among the crowd of everyone else, as it's a pretty competitive industry to get into.
It is.
What are some things that people should know before going into the video aspect of sports?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different video aspects of sports. What I do, I mean, you should know football, know what you're watching, because they'll teach you, there's some things they'll teach you, like the, wide angle, tight angle, kind of thing, because they teach you basically, oh, this is what coaches like. And then each coaching staff, they'll have their own quirks about what they like and what they don't like. So you kind of learn on the job pretty well on that. As long as you know the sport, you're in pretty good shape, and can handle a camera, I guess. As far as other parts of video, I know like creative video, I guess the same, some similar rules would apply. Every coach you're going to work for, every team you work for, you might have something really cool that you bring to the table, and you want to keep that for sure, because that's why they hired you. So don't let anyone talk you out of that. But at the same time, understand that you might have really good ideas. Sometimes they're going to tell you no. Learn when to pick your battles. And try to find a way to keep your kind of personality and your own work if you're a creative person. And remember, like, try to tie it into what the coach wants or what the team or the players want to make them like it too, and kind of find that middle ground to where it works for everybody.
Awesome. No, that's great advice. I really appreciate that. The fact that you want to keep your personal brand almost in your work, but you also want to adapt to your surroundings.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent one of the cool things about here being in Dallas, because right now the UFL is, since it's a spring league, it's a lot of seasonal jobs. And so there is some overturn after every spring season. I was able to work with SMU a couple of years ago, just right up the road in Dallas, and we won a conference championship, which was really awesome. But the creative students there, they're incredible. I mean, there was this one kid, he would literally be in the office like a full-time, like 40 hours a week as a full-time student. And then it was incredible. And he would go out there, he'd be filming things at 7 a.m. He'd go on the road trips, and he would help the director at the time. They would all be working on different projects, because there was a lot of projects. And a lot of times too, they got to handle recruiting. They got to handle actual gameplay. They got to do photo shoots for practice and media day. So there's a lot of different tasks they have to do too. So make sure you're able to multitask and handle a bunch of things, but they always put their own specific twist on it. And you could tell there were two different guys, or, and a few girls doing different things. And you could tell maybe when one of them did their own, like, oh, that's their image, or that's, Spencer's image, that's Juniper's image. but it was all under kind of the SMU brand, right? And so you could tell this is all like what the current vibe that SMU is going for, but you can tell kind of maybe by what else they did, who made it specifically.
Sounds like it takes a lot of dedication, but as you get better at it and you kind of trademark yourself, you can really succeed and set yourself up for success in the future.
Oh, absolutely.
And then on a related note, what specific skills do you believe are important for people to have to be successful in the sports industry?
I think top two, in my opinion, are communication. You've got to communicate, and adaptability. I think communication kind of speaks for itself. You need to be able to communicate, I think, in pretty much everything, in life, to, successful relationships or, whatever your job is, or if someone buying a car, you got to communicate, whatever it is. But, over communicate. It's always better to rein someone in than to have to push them out. That's a lot more frustrating for people. And as far as adaptability, things change in sports faster than almost anything. I mean, whether it's the game specifically, or how fast things are moving 100 miles an hour, and that could be for marketing, that can be for video, that could be for the team, like the players, the training staff. Like, sometimes the trainers talk about they're working on somebody that just got hurt, and then all of a sudden the next play happens and someone else got hurt, and they have no one else to run out there to go get them, and they have to figure it out. I mean, they just have a split second to figure out how they're going to handle that. Same thing can be said, equipment breaks. what are you going to do? You're on a road trip. Make sure you have backups. And then you now look at college athletics specifically with NIL. I mean, all the administrators and business side of people, they're getting really frustrated with all that's going on. So you just got to adapt to it. Otherwise, it's going to pass you by.
Absolutely. I think communication is an extremely important thing. Like you said, it applies to everything. You can never communicate too much. And then adaptability based on, like you said, there's so many situations you got to be able to react, make quick decisions. So those are great advice. And
that too. And another way of that too is just, if you want to work in sports, a lot of times you're going to have to move more too. And that has to do with adaptability too. Are you able to, pick up your life and move for an opportunity? I mean, it's hard. If you're limiting yourself to just a select area, it's going to be a lot harder to break in. Especially with how competitive it is, and that's another way. And it's a kind of a personal form of adaptability, but it's also required.
Absolutely. I think that's very important. That's something that a lot of people might not consider at first, but definitely something they should be aware of for sure. And then looking more at your education, you spent time studying journalism at the University of Arizona, and you published multiple pieces during your time. Have any of those skills translated to your current role? And if so, how have they?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny because originally when I switched into journalism, I was trying to do broadcast journalism. And so up until my last semester in college, that was going to be my degree, was broadcast journalism, which would have tied in a lot better with me doing video, which was what I was kind of doing in college. But they're like, well, you'd have to come back for an extra semester. I'm like, the scholarship money runs out. I cannot afford that. So I guess I'm out of luck on that one. But yeah, the articles were a lot of fun, as far as the communicating aspect again, there's because that was different because I got to interview Kate Reese, who was on the women's basketball team at the time, and Lucas Havrasik, who was an old kicker of a football team. And I had to kind of, separate like, okay, I can't be really a fan here. And I'm also not like an employee here at this point either. I have to, figure out there's a little bit of a different line. And I think in some ways you can remember that, you've always got to have that professional line, whatever your position is. You can love seeing the athletes and the coaches and everything, but you got to remember that this is a job, and you need to remember that, you don't want to go in there and fanboy or fangirl or anything, because you're going to get fired pretty quickly if that happens. And there are some people that do that, believe it or not. I've seen students do it, and I've seen full-time employees do it, where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm working with this person. This is so cool. And they like start taking selfies with them, or they're trying to inappropriately get too close to them. And it's like, yeah, that's not what you're here. That shouldn't be what you're here for. So always to kind of remember, there's got to be a professional line between you and your work.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And yeah, definitely something that not everyone's aware of. And
like we're all fans, right? That's why we want to get into this originally, but we got to remember this is also our job. So
absolutely. Job over fan 100% of the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then kind of looking more at other aspects, what are some ways people can gain sports experience through volunteering?
Just kind of look at the opportunities, I guess. I know SMA, like at Arizona, has a lot. They still have a volunteer list. They used to have that.
Yeah, they have volunteering for like different parts of the athletic department for sure.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that, it's great. Just, got to do that. If you can find an internship in college, it'd be great if it's paid, but if it's not, don't completely write it off, because my best boss still to this day came from the unpaid internship. And she's a friend for life at this point. So, especially in college, don't be afraid to take those risks or take those opportunities. It's always better to do it younger than when you're older. And then you're like, oh, I should have done this. And now I kind of regret not doing it. That seems pretty cool. Just, like I was saying earlier, get FaceTime, get people to recognize you, and make sure they know you're working hard. Not that you're just showing up, but that you put in the work and you're bringing value to whatever yours that you're volunteering with.
100%. No, that's definitely great advice, and something that is important to look into, taking those chances while you have the opportunity to, not being afraid to try new things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now looking more at what you're doing right now, what has been your favorite part of your time with the United Football League, and what is something that you didn't expect going into it?
Ooh, I think probably the favorite thing I've had is getting to meet so many different people. Because typically, like when you work for a team or any franchise in any sport, you're just with that one group. This is a different kind of ordeal because it's a spring league and the whole operation is headquartered in Arlington, Texas. And so all 8 teams are around the area. They practice here, and then we fly out to our designated locations. But so, we work with the other video managers, we work with the other teams in a lot of ways. And it's really awesome because, instead of just having your little circle, you have a much bigger circle of people that you get to meet and interact with. I've met people that have worked at Air Force or Colorado State or Southern Miss. I met the old Arizona video manager that was there before the current guy that was there, who's been there for 20 years. I mean, it's incredible. And then his daughter, who went to LSU, came in and worked for us. And then we have guys who work in the NFL. My boss specifically works with the Raiders during the NFL season. It's like you got people from all over the place, and you got ex-NFL players that have come in trying to revive their career. Like I was on the Las Vegas Vipers 2 years ago. We had Vic Beasley and Martavis Bryant on the team, and it was awesome. And Ben DiNucci would practice right before us with the Sea Dragons. It was just really cool seeing all these guys. And then old coaches like Bob Stoops. I mean, it's just a league of kind of old generations are being mixed together, and it's all for people because they just love football and they just want to continue their playing career, whether it's here or at a higher level. And it's just a lot of fun. And it's so much knowledge. It's just kind of coming out from every corner.
Yeah, 100%. That sounds like a really cool, like blending of ideas, blending of generations, and just everyone's coming together for the same thing because they love the game.
Yeah. I mean, last year when we had 2 different coaches on staff, one was like 29, just a year or 2 older than me. And then we had this guy, Paul Pasqualoni, who of all things, my dad met him about 45 years ago at the Peach Bowl when he was coaching Syracuse. And I was able to connect with him on that. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. I mean, it's things like that. Like you wouldn't get that, usually. That's just an incredible experience, but you're just getting these people from all over the place. Like, how cool is this?
Yeah, that's awesome. Shows that the UFL is a unique league in its own way.
It's really exciting. And, it's funny, too. We tested that kickoff a couple of years ago, I guess last year, actually, before the NFL took it. So,
yeah. And then lastly, kind of wrapping up here, if you could give one piece of advice to someone looking to break into the sports industry, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say that remember that working in sports is a privilege, not a right. There's a lot of jobs out there that we could be doing. We're more than welcome to go try, right? Working in sports, it does take extra effort. It does a lot of times take extra time. You got to move around a bit. The hours can be really grueling sometimes, and sometimes it can be tough. And it'd be like, oh gosh, is this worth it? Well, yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun, and it just feels like you did a lot when you accomplished something. And so if you really can say that you want to do that, just realize that, there's a lot of people that want to do what you're doing. There's a lot of people that never get a chance to walk on a field or a basketball court or a hockey rink or get to see all the behind the scene things that you're getting to see and do. And, and they think your job is really cool. So don't take it for granted.
Awesome. That's a great way to end. I appreciate that advice for sure. It's definitely something that you have to look in the bigger picture, seeing everything that's going around you, just kind of see what's going on and appreciate how far you've come.
Thank you so much, Tyler. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, that will do it for this episode. Today, we were joined by Christopher Pirolo, the assistant video manager for the United Football League. Christopher, thank you for your time. I truly appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you, Tyler, and I wish you luck to the rest of your podcast. Bear down.
I would like to thank you all for taking the time to listen to this episode. I hope you found it interesting and ultimately took something away that will help you in the next steps of your journey. And with that, we will see you next time on Next Gen Game Plan, a podcast for future sports leaders.